Welcome to the Winner's Playbook with Steve and Josh. Disclaimer: the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.
All right, welcome back to the Winners Playbook. My name is Steve Sloan, Managing Director of Link Wealth Group. I've got my co-director here, Josh Lee. Josh, before we kick into gear, what's been happening over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, mate. A lot as always. Life's incredibly busy, as we've sort of alluded to. A lot going on with the business, a lot in personal life, and everything there and in between, which is good and exciting. And yeah, we've blasted through the first half of the year, which has gone through in an absolute blink of an eye, and here we are in the second half of the year, and we've got some big things happening in the business. Of course, baby due on my end, due in November, which is really exciting. But obviously, there's just a lot going on in the world in general, not just in our own lives and in our own bubble, but if we're talking, around the markets and some, who knows how they're going to play out towards the end of the year. You got the US election, Trump and Biden. Trump actually being shot over the weekend, which is just insane to think about. The fact that event went down, and who knows if he didn't actually turn his head, history. Well, imagine how that could have all looked. But yeah. I guess, how that plays out and what the markets do, the share markets, I don't know. You've got interest rates, still, talks of interest rate hikes here in Australia, how that plays out. It's just so rapidly changing. I think sometimes you just can't try and predict what's going to happen, and you just got to go with the flow, basically. So that's probably how I'd summarize things at the moment. Steve, I'm going with the flow. How about you? Yeah. You've just come back from a nice holiday?
I have, mate. Yeah, no, I had a nice holiday away in Queensland with the family. It was good to step away from the business for a while.
Yep.
Left it in good hands. That was nice. It's always good to know it still keeps running while I'm away. Probably need to do a bit more of it, to be honest, just to
why not?
Keep me energized. But yeah, you're right, mate. Look, it's like a daily thing these days, isn't it? You wake up the next day and there's something else happening in the papers, and how that flows through to our industry is, well, markets react, right? And you sort of, and that's why you got to not look at the noise sometimes, because they're going to react to stuff like that, Trump being shot or whatever it may be, and that really has probably not a lot of impact on a company's earnings, but the markets react to it anyway. So, but lots of exciting stuff that keeps us in a job and entertained at the same time. But this week's conversation, mate, all about negotiation and the art of negotiation and why it's so important.
Yeah.
Let's dive into it. First ask, what are some of the biggest negotiations you've been part of? And how did you roll out with that, and what made it successful?
Yeah, so I'll let you obviously talk more on the business side of things with some of the acquisitions that have been done over the years. But yeah, some big negotiations. I guess there's a lot of ways you can actually look at this, because it's not just business or property. Obviously, you've got a few properties. Part of that was negotiation in all of that process in itself. There's, I suppose, one actually talking about is me coming into the business, actually, like between us, like me coming into the business, that wasn't just, hey, yes, let's do it. Like that was probably 12 to 18 months of conversation that we were working through to get to the point of that happening. So 100% negotiation there. But I think it's keeping business, property, and like money things separate. I think like negotiation is like a crucial element of any thing you're really doing in life, because that could be even negotiating with your spouse around whatever's going on in your life, and understanding that sort of give and take, relationship to, you're not being manipulative. You're not trying to manipulate someone, but you're trying to get them to see your point of view or get them to agree and take your offer in a way. So I think it goes further than just like business and money. It's a crucial skill, I think, to have in your life. And yeah, sure, I've had to negotiate plenty of times in my life through high school, maybe getting Alana to date me initially. That was a probably pretty tough gig. And here we are 10 years later, and we've got a child on the way. So there's probably a bit of negotiation on my front on that end. But
negotiation.
But yeah, career obviously is a really big one for a lot of people. Negotiation there is a critical one, but I think you need to go at it, the right way. So when you are negotiating, you got to know your way of going in and your angle, and particularly if you're looking at being an employee and you're trying to negotiate with your employer, maybe for a pay rise or something, don't go to it with nothing. Like, don't go to it asking, hey, I want more money. Like, we'll talk about it a bit later, but you got to be acting in a way that's going to warrant you getting ultimately what you do want. There's definitely a bit of an art to that negotiation piece. But what about on your own, Steve? Obviously, I've been a part of some of the acquisitions that we've done with Link, and how have some of those ones gone down over the years?
Yeah, look, I suppose business is probably stepping away from property that you've just spoken about. Negotiating on business transactions is probably the bigger end of town that I've been dealing with over the last 10 years. Some I've got right, some I've got wrong, somewhere in between for some of them. And yeah, they take a lot of effort. So for those viewers out there, in this game of financial advice, you do have the ability sometimes to scale up your business, and that's through acquiring other businesses or other financial planning practices or mortgage broking businesses and the like. And we've had to enter into many negotiations to get there, to do so. And so I suppose I've learnt a lot over time, and I think, like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. But sometimes you don't know, you can't negotiate to the point where it's tit for tat as a bidding offers. It's sometimes you're negotiating with one offer, and that's the best offer you can get, and that's probably the most challenging types, because you don't know where the other parties sit from a bidding perspective. But so that's very challenging, clearly, because you don't want to, no one wants to go too high. But sometimes it depends on the opportunity, and sometimes you've got to go with your gut. But all I can say, if you're going to go with your gut, you've got to know your stuff. You've really got to understand the market you're playing in, the people you're playing with, the different stakeholders and what they want out of the deal. You've got to really understand that before you want to enter that space, because there's so many components that go into it. And it sounds easy when you just send an offer over at the table saying that's my bid, but if you don't understand all of that behind the scenes, well, you're probably going to end up in a really bad position, I suspect. And over time, I think I've probably just got better and better at it, which has been good. And I think if you can do it well, clearly, you can come out on top. But there's so many things that go into it, because it's the type of business you have marrying up with the business you want to buy. You've got to understand that. What's the outcome going to be looking like, cash flow wise, or whatever it may be? What's the upside? What's the downside? What's the risk factors? What's the culture fit? What's the pricing methodology for each group? How that all looks and feels. So there's just so much that goes into it. So yeah, it's really a bit of an art, to be honest, but you just get better at time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I genuinely just came out of a conversation with a client, and I won't name names, but they've been given the option of actually buying into a childcare facility. These clients, and they've been giving an offer, and then questions of how do you go about negotiation? Because of course in a negotiation there's generally a buyer and a seller. That's like what's happening. There's someone that's looking to sell something, and someone's looking to buy something in general terms. And generally, the buyer is trying to sell for the highest price that they. The seller is trying to sell for the highest price that they possibly can, because they're trying to maximize their return on whatever it is that they're actually selling. And then you've got the buyer who's on the other end of it, trying to actually buy for the lowest price that they possibly can. And then there's that sort of happy, how do you sort of figure out, and that's that negotiation piece that actually happens. But in some situations, you might be in a situation where you're actually going to pay overs for something, because it's not just looking at the here and the now, it's looking at the future of what you're buying into. If it was, say, a business, like, okay, maybe you're paying a little bit over to get into it now, but where could that possibility, or where could that business be in 5 to 10 years? And part of that is looking at, the financials. So when I was chatting with these clients just now, like, profit and loss, the balance sheet, like actually look at what the business has been doing for the last 2 and 3 years, because then that's going to give you an understanding of, when you're going back to the table here to ask like what you're comfortable with paying and how those terms are ultimately going to look, well, then what you're kind of signing up for as well, before you ultimately get into bed. And if you're talking about business or property, like they're big transactions. So you certainly don't want to, you certainly don't want to get them wrong, I don't think. And I truly think negotiation is essential for financial success. But what about how do you sort of work on that, Steve? Negotiation, like, it's obviously a skill. Is there any pointers of how you get better at it other than trial and error?
Yeah, how do you get better at it? Look, there's lots of books out there on that you can read up on this stuff. We've got a book club at our company, and I strongly suggest reading books is only something I've recently probably done a lot more of than I had in the past. And I think that's a really good way to do it. Yep. I've always had a really good mentor, and I've had a mentor for 30 years, and he's He's actually my godfather, very big businessman, has a lot of businesses, and I learnt a lot off him in terms of business in general, but more about how to deal with people and dealing with, when you're negotiating, it's all about dealing with people, right? It's that relationship build, it's how to work in with people, it's how to set expectations, how to set goals and do it the right way. I'd probably do, that's your starting point, and if you can't get it, go get a mentor. And in the day, I suppose if you don't step into a world, if you really don't know it, probably pay for someone that does know how to do it, like a property transaction, for instance. But I'd say my biggest takeaway, and it's hard to do, but in any negotiation or transaction, I know this is true, but don't get too greedy. And the reason why I say that is because, as you just said, you've got to look at the outcome and the upside. So if you take a small, if you negotiate too hard at the start and lose it, well, what does that look like from a 5 to 10 year perspective? Because for the extra, call it 500 grand, right? If you lost the deal for 500 grand, but the 10-year outcome is 5 million up, what's the best position? You know, and I'll take this as a prime example. When you were buying into Link, right, you could go hard, right, and go, right, well, hang on a minute, I want the extra bit. But then what does the bigger picture look like? And I think that's the key part with any negotiation is, of course, you want to get the best price. That's human nature, right? 101. But look at the big picture, right? What does that big picture look like? How do people slot into that picture? What does that outcome look like? What does everything look like? Don't just take it as a monetary figure for now. Don't think too short term, because it's very easy to do that. Very easy. Most people do fall into that trap of that now picture, that extra kick in the money. But really consider that outcome, and also not just monetary, lifestyle, everything involved in that. I think it's really important. They know that picture, but know your market, know it well, and get good advice.
I think it's a good one talking about property in particular, because that's where this generally is a lot of negotiation goes on when you're acquiring property. And the property that I've just moved into, it's property is always an interesting one when you're trying to negotiate. And I've actually used like you said, using other professions or people to actually help with that. And like I've used a buyer's agent before to help me acquire a property because they can negotiate it on my behalf. They're experts in the field, and so there's definitely something to be said in doing that, and also weighing up what your time's worth. Where do you best spend your time? And that's where it sometimes could be a better option for you to pay someone 5, 10, 15, 20 grand or whatever it may be to actually help you negotiate whatever you're trying to get through. But yeah, there's definitely something to be said in not trying to screw people over as well. Like, the property that we purchased, okay, maybe could have went harder on the negotiations of where we're living. We also got to weigh up where you're at in life as well. And we were kind of in a point where we had to sort of buy something, so we couldn't go too hard, because then the risk was that we didn't get this house and we're living at the in-laws place, which was not going to be an option of what I wanted to do. So you got to be careful. And then, like you said, paying $500,000 or an extra 50 grand. But then when you zoom out over, say, 10, 15, 20 years in the broader scheme of things, like, it's a drop in the ocean. So I think there's definitely something to be said in that. But then there's also situations where you can negotiate hard. Like, there could be circumstances where there is a distress seller of something, and they need to get. And we've seen that. We've been looking at properties actually for the company as of late, like actually looking at acquiring an office, and we've actually seen that the commercial space in Victoria is actually quite under stress from COVID, and there's not many people actually wanting to go back to the offices. So there's actually people selling properties at a major discount. So it's it's definitely a buyer's market, so to speak.
Yeah, that's 100%. And also, like, if you're in a position where you're set and there's no real push to really need it, right? And you can just negotiate hard, because whether you get it or not, well, doesn't matter. Absolutely,
Exactly.
Negotiate hard. Go for it. Go hard, because it doesn't matter either way, right? But if you got it, so it does really depend on the circumstance, big time here. Position, what you're trying to achieve, the outlook, and all of that weight, and you just got to weigh it all together. And of course, because it is quite complex. It doesn't sound it, but all of that balanced out is there's so much to take in there. That's why it's complex, and how you get that knowledge. Clearly time doing it over and over helps. But also just really understanding your market that you're playing in, I think is key.
Yeah.
I've been now in financial services for 20 years, which is scary, but that obviously gives you a bit of time to work through all those different scenarios and acquire positions and educate yourself, whether it's through your study, your masters, your tertiary education, or book clubs for that matter. The more the better.
And if I throw two questions in at you, Steve, would you say everything in life is negotiable? And then one further to that would be then, obviously for, everyone out there working for someone, if you're an employee, negotiating for better pay, that's obviously a very interesting one. And, looking at it from your lens, or if you're actually trying to put yourself in the shoes of being an employee, how would you approach that? Like, how would you approach that negotiation piece of, trying to get a pay rise and push your career? What do you think?
I'll go the second one first.
Yep.
Yeah. So look, I think, and you and I know are on the same page with this stuff. Anyone working for us at Link, it's all about proving yourself, right? And so if you want a role and you want a bigger pay and you want a bigger structure and all that type of stuff, and you got to add more value, right? So come to us. There's no harm in talking about it, but don't demand it. Talk about it. Make it clear what you want to get to, which is totally fine. But then deck out how you're going to do it first, right? So go take on that new responsibility. Go take on a challenge the business has, and prove yourself. And take a stress away from the directors or the managers, and step up first. Once you've done that and proven yourself, then you've got some leeway on the negotiation table with the boss, right?
Yeah.
And trust me, if they've seen how good you are and what you can do, and you've just probably saved the business X through streamlining a process, you've increased productivity by doing X, the business is winning and winning and winning, and you're probably taking more stress off the bosses, right? So they're going to naturally probably give you a pay rise with that anyway, because they're going to go, thank God, this is fantastic. So do it that way rather than walk in with a demanding offer or demand of more pay. That's what I'd say to that. And all the people who are successful at Link, they do exactly that, right? They prove themselves first, but then we talk about that second step. Is everything in life negotiable? Is everything in life negotiable? That's a very big question, that one. As a married man with two kids, facing up against my 5-year-old daughter, probably not.
Fair call.
Probably not. So no, that the blanket rule is not everything's negotiable, but most things are. So and as you said, everyone as humans want to get on the, voice their opinion, have a view on certain things, whether that's financial, non-financial, family, personal life, friends, whatever that may be. But I'd say this: just don't take life too serious. There's so many ups and downs. There's so many issues that come up in life: death, sickness, all of that put together. Zoom out, as you said, because I think you can get caught in that moment. Everyone does, and I think as you go along down the track of life, zooming out becomes easier because you sort of go, you know what, like, is this really worth it? Yeah. So take the big picture view. Yes, you want to get the best situation, of course, everyone does. But take the big picture view, and you generally win as long as you know your stuff and your position and markets. And if you don't get the information off education or someone else, but definitely zoom out and you win.
Yeah, and all I'd really add to that is, for people wanting to, negotiate possibly with their employer is like you said, like, you got to go in with some firepower, like a resume. Don't go and just demanding, like, prove yourself first. And I always say, and something I've always done in life to get to anywhere of where I've wanted to be, is I've acted like I was in the position before I got to that position, or whatever it was I wanted to achieve in life. So I was, acting like, say, I'm an owner of the business or I'm a manager or whatever it may be, before I was ultimately in those roles. So it's definitely all about proving yourself before you get there. And then a part of that might be you having that conversation, and you actually need to upskill, but then be proactive with it. Like, if you need to invest in yourself, possibly you might be in a business where they won't actually invest in you, and then you might have to invest in yourself out of hours to then upskill you to where you ultimately then need to be and have the skill set to manage whatever you're trying to do at your business. So you definitely don't be afraid to invest in yourself. Like, that's the best return you're ever going to get on your money, is investing in yourself, hands down. Like, take away investing into the share market, buying property, investing in the business, like the best investment you're ever going to make is if you only had $10,000, I would say take that $10,000 and put that into yourself. Don't put that into anything else, and upskill yourself in whatever skill set that may be. Maybe that's going to, read books on negotiation or the art of selling or whatever it may be. One of the most famous investors out there, Warren Buffett, credits a lot of his success to a sales book and course that he read very early on. So it's all about, really reinvesting and investing back into yourself if ultimately you want to get out there and I think achieve whatever you do want to achieve in life. But before we close out then, Steve, we've kind of already touched on all the bits and pieces of negotiation, but, if people are like, common negotiation things they might be negotiating would be property or cars. Do the way you go about negotiating for those things, do they actually change much, or do you sort of go in them at the same way? Is there anything that's really different there, or?
Not really different. I'd probably just say the weight of them, right? Like, so you don't, the smaller the risk, the less it's probably going to have to be a big issue, have to work on it for so much. But the process you probably go through is the same, to be honest. It's all about negotiating to get the best price for yourself, work out where your comfort level is, things that are not going to add value to your life, like really like a car, a boat, it's just an object, a transaction. Yes, it's important not to get ripped off, of course, but not a game changer, right? So, it's the big things that impact your life. You've got to spend a lot of time, make sure you know back to back. Small things like objects and stuff, well, it's just, just try and get the best price, I suppose. But the process you go through is similar. But, clearly businesses, property, anything big, you got to spend the time, know it, understand it, weigh up all aspects of the transaction, be that financial, non-financial, and get the right information, and away you go.
Yeah, one thing I'll say that actually never hurts just to ask. Actually, when you're buying certain items, whether it be a home or a car, and I can use an example of, now we've been buying a bit of furniture for the new house that we've just moved into, and Alana and I were both on the phone. She was speaking to one furniture retailer and I was speaking to another, and then she comes in and she's like, they gave me a discount just, because we asked. They just dropped the price immediately relative to the normal price. And then I was on the phone. I was like, I was just like, look, is that the best price you can actually do? I didn't even push hard at all and said, look, I'm walking away from this. The guy's like, let me get back to you. He comes back, knocks like $400 off the piece of furniture. And just by asking. So all I'd say there is, what a tip. Like, just, it never hurts to ask, because the worst thing that they're going to just say is no. And then, at least that's the best price or what they're willing to actually do it at. And if anyone listening to this maybe takes that, it might just save you a few $100s here and there by just asking. So certainly never hurts to ask. But guys, we're going to wrap it up today. I hope you are getting value out of what we are talking about. If you are 5 stars on Spotify and Apple, please do share us around. Follow us on all social media channels, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. And we also do have a newsletter floating around that goes out every week that Steve does put out. So you can definitely subscribe to that. As always, if you do want to chat to anyone in the business from a financial point of view, you can jump on the Link Wealth Group website, have a look at any of the advisors, and feel free to come through for anyone if you actually want to chat about your own personal situation. But until next time, Steve, I'll see you on the next one.
See you, mate. Bye.
See ya.